Welcome, everyone. Today we have a big gathering, and we will begin with a short clip of Bebe Simon dancing.
All right, let me see if I can share screen.
And Bebe Simon, her 100th birthday would be tomorrow, and we celebrate it today. Here she is.
Can you see and hear?
Yes, Len, please say a bit about it. There she is. Thank you. And we will introduce people, and we will have video clips. Most of you know already. We have Rob Foxcroft from Scotland, who was the first focusing teacher for many, many of us. And Gisela Uhl from Germany, who we've had many times at Help for Helpers. Leonard Grossman, who is Bebe's dearest friend. They began Chicago Changes Group years and years ago. Rosa Zubizarreta, who we know from Help for Helpers many times. And Barbara Dickinson. Rosa and Barbara wrote the book together with Bebe about how I teach focusing. So Barbara, would you like to begin? Maybe say a little bit, share one of your clips.
Okay. Len, would you please stop sharing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Where's
Or
this?
then, Len, there would be a bright red button.
Could I do it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, perfect.
Thank you. I can start, but we would be starting at the end. And I wonder if
Let's
maybe,
begin with Rob Foxcroft then.
yeah.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Oh. Well, hello, everybody. I had such a long friendship with Bebe, and I have so little to say. It's really nonverbal. For several years, she would phone me for 2 hours. I'm in Scotland, and she was in Chicago, as you know, and she would phone for a couple of hours every Saturday afternoon, and really until late in her life, always looking for some new opening, always feeling there was something that had not yet come to her, or that she hadn't, that there was a more that could be in her life. And then there was the very sad period just before she went into the home. And it was so wonderful when she was first in the home that she felt it was a home and she'd arrived and she could be happy there. And then the COVID period, by that time it was hard to understand and it was very difficult. You have to stay in your room. You can't, now you're allowed to sit in a corridor, but only 10 feet from the next person. And it was hard for her to make sense of all that by that time. But the earlier period, always this seeking forward for herself, and always stories. I met this person and we did some focusing and this happened. I met that person and we did some focusing and she gave me this new idea and I must tell you about it. For years, Bebe would phone me with, there's this new thing I have to tell you about. And yeah, it was like an ongoing education in a way of thinking about focusing, which is quite different from my natural way of doing things. It was very good for me. And I would go about in the focusing world and find people and they would say, oh yes, Bebe told me about you. So I met, some of you will remember Crystal Craft. I'm now free to tell my Crystal story because I don't know what Bebe had said to Crystal, but Crystal greeted me the very first time we met, many, many years ago, like a long-lost friend. And she said, Rob, in my next life, will you be my daddy? Well, that was Bebe's work, you know. And I don't know if she remembered she said it, but I never forgot. So I felt Bebe was a friend and a champion and a very complicated relationship for me. In some ways, I felt more like family than like friends. And she came to my 5 philosophy weeks that I organized, and really the teaching was done by more capable people than me. Very faithfully, although it was difficult ground for Bebe. But she was a good person to have in the group because she would say, no, I don't understand yet. This isn't clear yet. Just as she used to say to Jean. I remember being in Chicago and Jean was working with somebody and he suddenly stopped and he said, no, Bebe tells me I'm doing this all wrong. And he said, what is it, Bebe? And Bebe said, Jean, you're pushing her into her head. You're pushing her into her head. What are you doing? And Jean said, okay. She's right, of course. Now, and then he turned back to the person and his concentration was completely unbroken, and so was the focusers. And he said, now, so Bebe says we have to go down into your body and see what's there. And then the most beautiful thing happened. That was Bebe and Jean, that he didn't mind how she was with him, and she felt very easy in the group, whereas in any other group, I think she might have felt this was, you can't behave like that. And she sometimes said, why is it that I'd always notice first and nobody else notices, and I have to say? She sometimes felt that noticing made her uncomfortably conspicuous, but she would get to a place where she just had to say something, and Jean Gentlin was very friendly to that in Bebe, so it was a very beautiful thing to see. And then there was 9/11, and it was the last day of the first philosophy week, and Kai Nelson was with us, and she flew back to Texas, except that her plane went to Newfoundland instead, and we had to find her a rescue in Newfoundland. Bebe's plane, they made no announcement at all. It was halfway across the Atlantic, and suddenly it turned round and came back to Scotland. And no explanation. So the passengers were all deeply bewildered, and she came back to my house, and she went to stay with my friends for a week, and then we found her a flight home. So that was an adventure, and all in good part, and interesting, and full of life, and gave us time together. And also we went once, Andrew, her son Andrew, and I, and Bebe went up to the north in Scotland and went and looked at the hills and the mountains, and had a very wonderful time there. But the essence of the friendship for me was this deep, deep affection and loyalty. You felt Bebe was on your side, you know. And a great kindness, of course. And I think that's all I can say, which all seems a little vague to me, but I hope it gives you some kind of feeling.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rob Foxcroft. And Christian and Victoria Dessauer are here today. Maybe you'd like to speak next and show us your clip.
Can I say one more thing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you do?
I think my happiest memory of Bebe ever was watching her dancing with Christian.
Yeah,
Just out of this world with happiness.
we danced tango.
Yeah, it was just sublime.
Yeah. Yes, hello.
So
hello, Gisela.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, Gisela. Gisela, hello. Hello, Len. We know. Yes.
Gisela is muted. Gisela is muted.
I can show you something. Victoria will show you at first something we got from Bebe 90. Someone in Chicago loves me. It was a time when our first son, he's now 33, was born. Bebe was in Germany at the first International Focusing Conference which was not easy because it was the first conference in Germany, and the relationship between Jewish people and American people in Germany was not so free from bad vibrations. My English is not so good. I hope you understand me. And so he came every 3 years to Europe when the international conferences were, and every time she visited us here in our home. And the first time David was born, the second time our son Simon was born, third time our daughter Elena was born. And so our 3 kids had a grandma in the United States, in America. Phoebe was our grandmother in America, and we had a really deep connection. And we visited her with our family in 2012, and we stood, I think, 1 week in her house in Oak Park. It was a very intensive and interesting time. We could kennenlernen Bibi from the side, how is im Alltag, what's the Alltag, in the normally day, with her rituals at the morning when she prepare her to breakfast and eat different vitamins and stickies and all this stuff. It was very good and interesting for us. And the last visit we made was with Victoria and I. We came 2019, and we met also Len there. We go lunch.
Went to the senior residence.
Went to the senior residence. So I think I can say I learned from Bibi focusing in a new kind, not the kind from the, it's schwierig, theoretical point of view. Bibi lived focusing all the time, and so we get very much gifts from her, and all the time when we at the conferences we work together in partnership, focusing. And the first time, last sentence, what I tried to say, the first time I met Bibi at 1919, I take part at the week-long, 1919, at the week-long with Bala Jason, Mary McGuire, Jean and Bebe Simon and Rita Bernstein and other people. I was a young man and looked for adventure, and it was an adventure for me to go to Chicago and live there 3 months and go to the university with Jean, smoking cigarettes in the university. So I sent Barbara a little movie. This is one I like to take it to my heart, and I will remember Bibi in this kind. I saw her there. It's a Belmont Village. Victoria, maybe say something, please.
Okay. Yes. Hello, everybody. First, I wanted to show you this little T-shirt. It's a very little T-shirt for a boy, 3-year-old boy. So you can imagine how long Bibi is in our minds and as well in the minds of our kids. And I appreciated very much how she managed to get older. And for me personally, when I think about getting older or getting an old woman, I would like to manage it like she did. because she was so, she accepted everything what happened in her life, and also by getting older. And that's what I remember and what I want to continue for my life. So, okay, I think there are so many people. So who wants to be next?
Barbara, would you show the little movie?
Yes, of course. Hold on.
Oh, no, not me. I did it my way. For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels, not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blow and did it my way. Thank you, Frank Sinatra, my way.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Barbara. Yes. So, have a moment of quiet to absorb. Already today, Rob Foxcroft, Christian and Victoria Dessauer. Maybe Rosa, would you like to step in?
Sure, Katarina. Yeah, especially because it's a good segue here. I first met Bebe when I attended a focusing conference at Asilomar and attended a workshop that she was teaching called How I Teach Focusing. And I was stunned because she was doing it her way. She was doing it differently than other people were, but she wasn't making a big deal about it. Like, she wasn't saying, oh, they do it this way, I do it that way, they do it this way, I do it that way. She was just doing it her way. And she was creating this wonderful space for herself by calling it How I Teach Focusing. So it was very clear from the beginning, like there was no argument. There was this is how she taught focusing. One of the things that I loved was the love exercise. I had never come across that before. I had only seen people using focusing to work on problems. I hadn't seen people using focusing to work on what's really special about something I love. Well, I learned later that that was an old exercise, that it was something that they had used in focusing groups, et cetera, but it was the first time I was coming across it. And so many other things about that workshop. There was just a freshness and a simplicity and a naturalness to how I teach focusing that I was so inspired afterwards that I went up to Bebe and I said, Bebe, have you ever, do you have a book? Have you ever thought about putting all this in a book? And she looked at me and she said, well, no, I don't have a book. And yes, I have thought about a book. And I said, oh, well, I'd love to help you write a book someday. Next time I met Bebe was a number of years later, and she remembered. I walked up to her and I said, oh, Bebe, I don't know if you recall that she said, oh, yeah, I remembered. You said you were going to help me write a book. And I was like, okay. And thus began a long, interesting, at times challenging process Bebe was very clear about what technology she wanted to use and what technology she did not want to use. And so what we did is we would talk on the phone. I would take notes, transcribe what she had said, and then send her. I forget, I think there was a fax involved at some point, but I think I was faxing Len, and then he would take the pages over to her, and then she would correct them and mail them back to me somehow or other. We figured it out how to do that. And then at some point, this big packet arrived in the mail. It was a manila envelope, one of those large ones. And it had clippings and clippings and clippings of all the various articles that she had published in Ann Weiser Cornell's newsletter and in other places and here and there and some unpublished things. And so at some point I asked for help, and there were a few people, and I wish I had names now, I have a terrible memory, who volunteered to help type some of this material turn it into, computer files, because it was more than I could manage at the time. And so we got all that material typed up, and then so there was a self-publishing company that I was familiar with because I had used it to self-publish my own book, which is a manual on how to do dynamic facilitation. And so I said, Bebe, well, I know these folks. And she was like, okay, let's do it. And so those are the folks that we had published the first version of her book. And then at some point, and I'm going to say I can totally relate to what happened next, because I had written my book, the Dynamic Facilitation Manual. The first version of it in 2002 was a spiral-bound book produced, at the copy shop. And between that and when I had printed it in 2014, it had had 4 different revisions. Because I'm a perpetual editor, and it's like, oh, well, we've learned something new, and da da da. Well, so I was not surprised when I don't remember whether it was Bebe or Barbara who approached me first. This was a couple of years after the first version of the book was done, saying, well, Bebe has some things that she wants to change and update, and she's really not happy with the name because she doesn't want to call it How I Teach Focusing, da 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 da. She wants to call it da 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 da, How I Teach Focusing. She wants to take the second part and put it first, and the first part and put it second, and she wants to, and I'm like, great, especially because Barbara, bless her heart, was offering to do this. I felt like I had done this big chunk of work in getting the first version of her book out, and now, there was a second edition. Great. So, so that's pretty much where my story ends. I definitely did stay in touch with, one other thing that so impressed me about Bebe and her dedication to focusing. This is well known, but it bears saying because it's something that I think she was very rightfully proud of, is how she had gone to every focusing conference. And, even Jean had not gone to very many of them, but very few other people had been to every focusing conference. And for Bebe, this was a life mission. She was also really clear that she wanted the proceeds of the book to benefit the Focusing Institute. So her commitment to the Focusing Institute, her commitment to focusing, and her commitment to her friends. Because I heard many stories about Bebe's friends and how she knew these people in Japan who later translated and published the book in Japanese, and how she knew these people over here and how she knew these people over here. And so focusing, her friends, and the Focusing Institute were 3 big loves in Bebe's life. So very pleased to hear.
In that beautiful moment at a seminar, I was there too. Yes. And we have such a lovely array, a gathering today. Maybe a moment of quiet now. Gisela, would you like to share a little bit?
Yes, will come out less than what everybody else said, I am afraid. But the first time I met Bebe, that was also at a focusing conference, the one in the year 2000 in Germany. And I happened to be in the same room with her. And a friend of mine said, that's better than even having a separate room by yourself. So, and that was true. At that point, a long year friendship started. And I was drawn to Bebe, who always honored what I have inside and pointed to it and reminded me when I focused with her to go to that deep inner place. And I felt accepted by her 100%. That's rarely happening to anybody in my life. And after that, we went together to Rob Foxcroft's 8 p.m. Focusing philosophy seminar in Scotland. The first year I wasn't there, but Bebe encouraged me actually to attend that, and she said it's wonderful. And also there, we shared a room. And in all the conferences I attended, I shared a room with Bebe, and in the subsequent philosophy seminars. And she always asked me to explain more of philosophy to her, and said I should write a book, but I didn't so far. Yeah, I visited Bebe many times in Chicago, in her home in Oak Park, and it was always exciting. She was so outgoing and lively, attending the summer festival in Oak Park on the street and mixing with people, and enjoyed everything she did. So she always was open to new adventures. I met her in England, also at Rob Foxcroft's seminar in Grasmere in the north of England. And she couldn't go up on one of these mountains anymore, so I went up with another person, Viola from Berlin, up the mountain, and Bebe said, when you are up there, please say hello and shout to me. And we went up and actually shouted from the top of that mountain, Bebe. And we told her that we did it, and she was very glad. I know she would have liked to come up, but that wasn't possible anymore. And also, I was with Bebe at Jean's 90th birthday. Barbara Dickinson picked us up from the airport. I had gone to Chicago, be with Bebe for a couple of days, and then went together with Bebe to New York, New Jersey. And then Barbara picked us up and we went to Jean. Before that, Jean had noticed that many people wanted to come to his 90th birthday, and he said, that's all too much. But there's never too much Bebe. And that I take for the greatest compliment someone could get from Jean. And it was great. It was just Bebe and me and Barbara Dickinson for a little while, and Rob Parker. There weren't many people, just as Jean had wanted it. And Bebe made herself especially nice looking with a blue blouse and jewelry and makeup, and talked to Jean. It was great to see them together. And Jean was glad to see her again because he was already 90 and died about 6 months later. So I'm glad we did that. And I would like to share, when I was visiting her in Oak Park, she invited me to the East Bank Club for jazz. And that she really enjoyed. She went there every 2 weeks on a Friday night, listen to music, enjoy some marvelous food there, and she befriended the musicians.
And we were.
Yeah, that East Bank Club that Bibi really, really liked. And me too.
On your visit.
She also encouraged me to see Frank Lloyd Wright's residence near her home in Oak Park. Always up for adventures, Bibi.
Yes. And Len was always there to help all these years. So maybe Len would you like to bring something, Len?
Sure. Listening to the three of you so far has brought back so many memories. It's hard to know where to start, but let me just say this, but to start with this, the other panelists today meant so much to Bibi. The Dessauers and Rob and Gisela and Barbara have meant so much to her over the years. And I'm going backwards now a little bit, but in the later years, focusing wasn't always even so easy for Bibi sometimes. And sometimes then she would say, but Rob said this in this poem, or Rob gave me this hint. And then she would use that as a way to get in, and it was just wonderful to see. And because focusing, as we know, is a process, and we all go through stages where it comes differently to us, and to Bibi, that struggle was part of her latter years. So I just want to pay tribute because, Gisela's visits meant so much. And hearing from Rob meant so much. And then, I visited her fairly frequently at the nursing home, at the assisted living place. And she would tell me who visited, or people would send me notes to take to her for either for her birthday or just because I knew I was going to go. And I would wait till I had a package of them and I would take them and read them with her. And they meant so much to her. But each of these people that are talking today had different relationships. Barbara was, a newcomer, relatively, but Bibi had heard her singing at, was it a week long or where was it? A conference?
Conference.
Yeah. And Bibi was just enchanted with Barbara's singing. And that meant so much to her. And then, Barbara took over preservation of Bibi's legacy, gathering all of her notes, all of her materials, all of her files on focusing, and trying to find ways to make them, to store them and to make them available to the rest of the world. So Barbara's done an incredible job here. And Gisela's visits, and staying with her, and even when Bibi couldn't travel anymore and wanted me to present for her in Merida, and Gisela made it possible for me to go, and Gisela didn't go to that conference. So, of course, Bibi wanted me to teach the love exercise at the conference, and that was not something I tried. Anyway, it was, but I'm trying to think of where to start. Let me just, I had a whole structure of what I was going to do, but we know how it goes in focus, and you don't always go there.
Yes, you have.
So let me just do
many lovely clips. And
a lot of them I put on YouTube for some reason, so that made it easy. But where is the one here. So this one.
And I wrote this with Rosa Zubizarreta, who it was her idea in the first place. So here's what it looks like. Here's what it's called. And it's available in many different places for you. And I do hope you're going to have a chance to know now, by this time, exactly what we were talking about and what Leonard is going to come home and tell me all about. And that's what's important, is to learn from, this is the story of how I teach focusing, actually. So this is what I'm hoping you're going to experience, and we'll know just what we were referring to all this time. Thank you, and goodbye, goodbye. Hello, hello.
So, so that's Bebe and her, as we really think of her in a way. And she asked me to take that clip and show it in Mexico, and I did. So I really love that clip. So let me just go back and talk about some of the things that I planned on talking about. I first learned about focusing back in 1979 when a dear friend of mine who had studied with Gene before he wrote the book at the University of Chicago, and I was being stubborn, and he's telling me about focusing, and I didn't want to hear it. So he finally paid for me to go to a workshop at the University of Chicago, and I had the blessed experiences that Gene chose me to be one of the examples that he was working with. And I got a felt sense there that different from, that stayed with me for years that I could go back to. And so I started, there were lots of changes groups around Chicago then, or quite a few. And so I was in a dark time, and I started going more than once a week, twice a week, to different changes groups. And in that period, I met Bebe. And also that's when Gene became my therapist, which is a real honor in a way, to spend a year or two, couple of years in almost weekly or bi-weekly therapy with Gene. But it was one of these, this is the time I met Bebe. Now let's flash forward to 1986. And Bebe called, and I had lived on the lakefront, but now I lived not far from her. And she asked, would I come to a demo of changes she was having in her apartment? And I did. And not long after that, she began the Tuesday Night Changes group, which met every week for about 35 years. And for 35 years, everybody who knew me, don't plan anything. Don't expect Len to be there on Tuesday night. He's going to be at Changes. And Changes was open every week during that whole period. If Bebe was at a conference or couldn't be there, she gave the keys to me or one of her other close friends who was there, and we would be there and wait. And to make sure that if anybody needed it and came, they would have a place to go for focusing. And that continued even in the later years when the number of people attending kind of dropped off. And sometimes it was just Bebe and me. And she also had rules, though. So, first of all, she said, I'm not the host. My apartment's available, but when you come in, if you want a glass of water, go to the kitchen and get a glass of water. If you need this or that, go take care of it. When you're finished, only put the glasses in the sink. Don't try to wash them. That was it. And also she had, wonderful workshops. And around 25 years ago or so, I finally started one of her workshops. But this was, again, at a difficult time, and I had to leave town for a weekend, and during the second workshop came, it was part of the package, and I couldn't attend. And Bebe had a Sunday group that met, but only for people who had taken the complete workshop. She wouldn't ever let me come to that Sunday group. After all the years we'd been together, but you didn't go to the second half of the workshop, you can't come. So she could be, and all during these years until the very last few, she was working downtown as a bookkeeper at a OBGYN's office, where she actually got my former wife a job there too, who worked there for many years, and took the L from the public transportation from Oak Park all the way down to the Loop. And it was unbelievable. And then came the fall. She had a fall, and then eventually had to go. We chose to go to the assisted living facility, which is quite an excellent facility. But then then COVID came, and I was trying to visit her every week, every other week. And I remember sitting. I couldn't go in, so she could come to a window, and there was and there were microphones or something. So I'm outside, and it's freezing in the winter, and she's inside. Christian, that video brought back memories because I went so many times into that cafeteria, and that guy who was singing would be there and doing his sing-alongs, and he was wonderful. She loved the music there. Rosa, your story. Yes, I mean, she worked on a computer at her desk downtown, but she would not have a computer in her apartment. So she did get the fax. I think you faxed to her sometimes, and sometimes you emailed to me, and I printed out drafts and sent them. And I was called her sneakernet connection to the world. So, everybody who wanted to reach her sent me notes. The whole book came through my computer in one form or another. There's so many memories. Maybe I'll just, so we sing, do we want more dancing, or we have a little bit of singing happy birthday to Bebe? Why don't we do that? Is that good?
Happy birthday to Bebe.
Happy birthday. Now let's see if I can do it right this time. So I'll just add that Red Holt's combo trio that played at the East Bank Club. And before that, they played in a restaurant in downtown Oak Park that was just a very few blocks from Bebe's, and had been there for decades. And every Thursday and Friday night, they played there. And so Bebe and a couple of her friends would go there, and she would dance there. And there was a nook that they sat in where the band combo was, and she would always sit behind there, and they would nurse a usually non-alcoholic beverage for hours and just enjoy every minute. So that's when she really got to know Red Holt. Talking about technology goofs, so Red Holt passed away a couple of years ago, and so I wanted to show her a clip of him, and I went to the assisted living place, and I'm playing it for her, and she's looking at the little screen on my phone, and she's not hearing anything, and I can't understand. Well, I'd forgotten that my phone puts the sound through my hearing aids, so she couldn't hear because it was going into my head and not to her. But she was just amazing, and so many members. There was one other thing that I can't remember.
You showed us the clip.
But
give us stories. Yes.
Anyway, I think that's, you've heard enough from me today. It's about Bebe. So it's so good to see all of you, and the memories that just come flooding back. So thank you, and hello.
Thank you, Len. And we would send you letters. Some of us would send you songs on an audio file, and you'd bring those to her. Yes.
Thank you.
Still waiting for Gisela's clip to come to me by email. Yes, thank you.
While we're waiting for that, I, first of all, would like to thank Lynn and Katarina and the whole Help for Helpers team, because last year I kept thinking we need a memorial, and in a conversation with them, it came to pass that this would happen the day before Bebe's 100th birthday, and I am so grateful. And I want to say something about the people that have spoken today, because I am the latecomer to the party. I didn't really become friends with Bebe. I didn't even know of her. I heard about her. It was like a legend at the Switzerland conference in 2013, but I had no contact with her until 2015 at the Seattle conference, where that story that Len told about music happened. But before I get to that, I just want to say, Rosa isn't my entire inspiration for anything I did about Bebe and her legacy. When I saw the book, when I read the book and realized what had gone into that, it was clear how important it was, Bebe, to our whole community. So thanks to Rosa. Rob, Rob and Christian and Victoria and Gisela and Len feel like family to me, because whenever I was with Bebe, you were all she talked about, and one adventure after another, and all of the things that you did with her and for her, she cherished so much that she just spilled it over whenever we were together. But Len, I was trying to think of what the metaphor was for you and all that you did for Bebe, but for the rest of us, to keep us in connection with her. And I think I've decided that your metaphor is you're like our group hug, that you kept us together in that way with Bebe through so many trials. I didn't know about being out in the freezing cold during COVID at the nursing home. That's heroic. So I went to the Seattle conference expecting a conference, but not expecting an epic friendship to begin. And there was something strange about the Follies at that conference. I remember people just kind of standing up and singing. So I stood up and I sang something, and I was ready to walk off, and this voice from the seats yells at me in front of everybody, "You can't leave. You have to sing something else." And so I sang a lullaby, and that was the beginning of our friendship. She, among other things, asked me and a friend of hers in Chicago to give a concert for her at the church, and we agreed. And I was there visiting her, and I often stayed in her apartment when I visited, or stayed in a place around the corner. But we were going to rehearse, and I thought, oh, I'll just sing this song that I like. And I was singing Bring Him Home from Les Miserables. And Bebe was in the kitchen making lunch. And all of a sudden I realized, if you can imagine Bebe running at the age of whatever she was, 91 or 92, she ran down the hallway, tears streaming down her face, sat down in the chair. I finished the song, and it turns out that that was her favorite song of all time, said she. And I had just sung a private performance for her in her living room. And that's one of my favorite memories. We went to her club, but you've heard and seen enough of that from what Len had to show. But how much she loved to dance, and how she lit up when she was among the people in that jazz club, and when she was among people in conferences. I remember dancing in Seattle too, and the room was brighter when Bebe was there and dancing. Bebe got very enthused about the Northwest Focusers Gathering, and I remember flying to Chicago and meeting up with her, and we went out there with some other friends, and that was the inspiration for two other gatherings to form. I'm sad to say they didn't survive. The Midwest Focusers Gathering had several events, and the Mid-Atlantic Focusers Gathering had one or two. But still, the idea, the inspiration that she gave to people, of course we can do this, yes, we can do this, was just part of what I loved. And I do remember, I think it was at the Northwest Gathering, I was roommates with her. And that was, someone else said it earlier, that was just the most fun. She, by the time I met her, of course, she was in her 90s and still giving workshops in her home, but she had had some trouble with her manual and some other things. And, I said, we can fix this. And I remember her friend, James Turk, would come and help her teach those. So we all got together and fixed up her manual and documented her workshops. And the thing I was fondest of is Bebe's dining room table was a central feature of workshops. She had all these cards and sheets of paper that had focusing sayings on them, and poems and quotes from Jean. And so we made sure that we preserved the dining room table. Someone also said something earlier about Bebe said that she couldn't focus. And I remember the first time she said that to me, I just sat there in utter amazement how this person who could teach anybody how to focus could say such a thing. And we would sit and we would very slowly and very patiently go inside. And every once in a while she would say she got a felt sense, but it was one of the great mysteries for me of how she could be this amazing teacher and yet struggled so much with it. But eventually what we concluded was that if she stopped saying she couldn't focus, if she stopped struggling with it and got quiet, something might come. And that happened several times while we were together. I already said something about the book. It was so much fun to work on the book after all the work that Rosa had put into it. And so there are two versions out there, but the latest version is the one where Bebe flipped the title. And that was a whole conversation we're not going to have here about calling it focusing can get in the way of making it accessible to people. And that was why she flipped the title. She said, if I call it Discovering the Gift of Your Inner Wisdom, which was the brilliant second half of the title of the original book, it might make it more accessible. So we did that. And then I don't remember exactly how this came to pass, but we decided to go to the Cambridge conference together. And I had said to Bebe, shouldn't we video your workshop? And she didn't want it videoed at home. I don't really remember the reasons completely, but I think it had to do with it wouldn't feel so confidential and so protected and so safe. But her conference workshop was a different matter. And so not really knowing what I was doing, and I want to say up front, I am not a Lou, but Nada wasn't there or wasn't available. And so I videoed it. And then I went home and I remember calling up Nada and I said, dear Nada, is there any chance you would take this video and turn it into part of your collection? And Nada said to me, I don't take other people's video, but in this case, I will. And so blessings to Nada, because she took my not very great video and turned it into a wonderful recording of Bebe's conference workshop. And so that's out there. And then when Bebe had to go into the nursing home, I forget why I was there, but I was there. And she said, please take my files. She had this about meter long drawer of all the papers that she had left from her years of focusing. It can't possibly be her entire lifetime collection because that would be huge. But there was this one drawer and I took it home and I sat with it for a little while because I wasn't sure what to do. But we finally decided we took all the things that were original to Bebe and we created I did this with my publishing partner, a lady named Lisa Hodorovich. I want to give a shout out to because she is the reason we were able to revise the book and she is the reason we have the archive. And we took Bebe's papers and put them up on a free site so that you can have access to whatever you want of Bebe's. And then I put a Facebook page up so she had a presence there. And until I see a list of everything, such as Katarina produced for this presentation, I don't really think about all of that work, because to do it for Bebe was pure joy. It wasn't work. It was so much fun. I got to spend time with her. We got to do things that were meaningful to us and to other people. And so what I want to tell you in closing is a little bit about what Gisela was saying. Before I ever met Bebe, before I ever knew most of you, I had spent over a year as a consultant to the Institute, and most of that time was spent with Gene working on what he wanted to work on. And it was every week, it was several hours a week. And that was in about 2011. So when Bebe and Gisela came to New York to visit Gene that last time, and that was at the end of 2016, I was giving them a ride from the airport, and I had no intention of going in because I was kind of familiar with elderly people, and I thought, oh, he's not going to remember me. And I was right. We walked in. He instantly took Bebe's and Gisela's hands and recognized them and greeted them warmly, and then looked up with a very nice, gentle smile on his face and said, "And who are you?" And I told him who I was. And I said, "I'll leave you to your visit." And I left. So then there was Jean's memorial, and Bebe came to New York, and a group of friends gathered. Bebe stayed with me, and I think one of her other friends stayed, and we went to the memorial. And then it was time for Bebe to go in the nursing home, and it was a while before I was able to visit her again. I think it was about a year before she passed away, but Len had warned me that sometimes she remembered and sometimes she didn't, and I had my own experiences with that. So when I went to the nursing home, I was prepared that she probably wasn't going to remember me, but I thought that's okay. And I had also been in touch with some people, and I had some gifts. I know Rosa sent her a beautiful scarf, and we had gotten her a plant from someone. And so we took the gifts and we got to the nursing home, and Bebe was in her wheelchair sitting outside of her room. And I walked up to her, and the look on her face, I will never forget. She instantly knew who I was. She looked up at me. And one of the things about this stroke was Bebe couldn't smile. In all the time I visited with her and in anything I've seen, she couldn't smile anymore. And if you knew Bebe, you knew her smile. But she looked up at me and she said, "How is this possible?" And we had our nice visit. We played her some music. We got Gisela on Zoom, and Gisela and Bebe were able to have a visit in the nursing home. And when we were ready to leave, can't do it, Bebe looked up at me and said, "This is the best day ever." And I'd kind of like to leave you with that, because this is the memorial that I wanted to have for Bebe, and this is the best day ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Oh. And maybe Charles will play the clip. Charles, you have the clip. Yes. It's fine. I'll do that.
I realize I'm on mute. I just put it in the chat. Anybody can watch it.
If you like to play it, Charles, if screen share it.
I don't know. We don't have too much. Do we have time for that? Okay, I can do it if people want to listen to or lead a group in the love exercise. I can do that.
I also
it's on YouTube.
I have the script for the love exercise that isn't too long, that I can provide or read if you want, whichever.
Yeah, people don't realize that that's actually in Jean's focusing.
Yeah.
But in any case, that's Bebe. Bebe is the specialist in guiding people through that exercise.
Would you like to see the clip? I can share it, or Charles, you can share it.
You can share it better, because I'm not sure how to share. You have
how to share it. Do not get a facelift.
What's that?
Sorry. Hang on a second. There's an
there's an ad at the beginning. You have to skip. Yeah. Why don't you do it, Barbara? I think you.
And also, Charles, you could put the link in the chat, then everyone would have.
I did. I already did put it in the chat.
Thank you. Yeah.
I actually was an interpreter for Bebe once. It's translated it for the Spanish-speaking people. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's it.
And we'll hear more from Charles in a minute.
No. That's fine. Yeah. My contact with her was very, very little.
This is 4 minutes long. Would you like to play the whole thing?
Yes, that's good.
I have spent many years following Gentleman around, so I do some of the things that he did. One of them is, first we do an exercise to show that focusing is not just about problems. And you don't have to come to fix your problem. That you can use it for positive, creative purposes. As we start out with some thinking, we haven't yet gone inside. So the first step is to pick something that you love. Not a person, not a pet. And something doesn't have to be what you love the most in the world. The first thing that might come to you is fine. Now think about why you love it. You must know one or two reasons why you love it. So think about that and also show me when you have it. Now, imagine that you are with the thing that you picked. And see how does it feel when you are with it.
Hi.
Now you want to
Katarina?
find what would describe that feeling. It might be an image, it might be a word, it might be a phrase.
I don't understand what you mean, Katarina.
When you have something,
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know what's right, but your body does. So go inside and ask whether that really is the right description for the feeling. For instance, if I were to say, what that feels like a warm fuzzy. And then I would ask, is that right, warm fuzzy? And let it tell me whether it needs something more, something less, whatever. So when you have the right description, you let me know.
You get the flavor of how she.
The flavor of it, and maybe Charles say a bit about your time with the Spanish translation. And Gisela, we've been on the phone, so your clip should be coming soon. And then Dorothy will read a poem that Rob Foxcroft wrote for Bebe Simon.
With me, it's very brief. I was at invited to participate in a coordinators meeting because I speak Spanish, and she led the group in the exercise, and I simply translated for the Spanish-speaking people. That's all. There's not much more to the story.
Thank you. Thank you. So what we could do is reverse the order a little bit, as you know Jean often did. And Dorothy to read the poem now while we still work out finding the clip from Gisela. Does that sound good? Yes. Thank you. So Dorothy, are you ready with the poem? I'll also put it in the chat for people to follow.
Audio. I believe, Rob,
This was written in 1989, and it's from Discovering the Gift of Your Inner Wisdom, How I Teach Focusing by Bebe, and it's called A Meeting Place. For my friend Bebe Simon, most sensitive of observers, most intuitive of guides, most loving of friends, who stood in a doorway and asked me in. This problem, this issue, this relationship, this project, this forming poem or painting or music, this dream or memory or fantasy, this grief, this happiness, this cage, this liberty. How does the whole of this feel in my body? In the middle of my body. This is the felt sense within myself, touching my felt sense. You want me to touch this? This vagueness? This unclear, unsatisfactory, insubstantial, global, fuzzy, and furry? This? Yeah, this. Sensing its connection with something in my life. What is its quality? What is its form? What words come there? What sounds and images grow there? When I dig around this boulder, does it rock? What is its nature? What is its worst? What is my direction? If the tide threatens to overwhelm me, can I reach dry land? If explanation, analysis, and blind thinking interrupt me, can I mildly murmur, thank you and no thank you? If I begin to attack myself, acid, alkali, corrosive, to sink, or beat myself up, can I say, yeah, that's good cement. You can dump it over there, right here. I've got this little green shoot and I mean to protect it. Oh yeah. Touching and sensing, listening and waiting so gently, so very gently, where whatever comes is welcome like fresh air, even when it is grief-stricken or forbidden, bitter, or violent, particularly when it is grief-stricken or forbidden, bitter, or violent, guilty, sexual, embarrassed, raging, hateful. Potato plants in a dark cellar grow deformed, and I too need sun and rain and wind and weather-strong roots and black soil. What soil? What weather? What ground? What tending? Listening. If it wanted to open in some way, would I be open to that opening? If it wanted to speak to me in some way, would I be deaf or hearing? If it wanted, would I welcome that? How does the whole of this feel in my body, in the middle of my body? Touching my felt sense, how does my body want to be? To sit or lie, to crawl or curl up, to stand or move to express me in growl or purr or scratch or snuggle? What language of my soul is written in my flesh, in muscle and sinew, in tension or in action? What dream or fantasy is caught here, like the frog in a fairy tale, trapped and waiting? All these passing years for the prince's kiss. Where is the mute-wise body trying to lead me? What regression? What catharsis? A step comes, a change of energy. A ripple of movement sweeps. The constellations of my heavens, where the lights went out so long ago. I had not thought to see it again, to see them lit again, radiating, echoing, repatterning my myth. Repatterning my myth, my now, my expectation. A shimmering wave pervades my seeming chaos, my infinite, intricate, interdependent, irregular, fractal geometries. Wind of change blows rain and flowers in deserts of my soul. Can I now receive this gift, hope, wonderment, these tears of transformation, this release, and between us, touching? How shall I express myself to you in words in tune, as the healer called it? Don't listen to the words, listen to the tune. In gesture, the language of my body, eye, hand, and skin, tension and movement. How shall I express myself to you? Touching. How do I want you to respond to me? With eye contact, poised awareness, and silent attention? With neat, deft, precise of my words? With sensitive ear for hidden sense and feeling? With close, intuitive attention whilst I am silent to my subtle bodily indications? I listen to your tune and gesture, your honesty, openness, and real presence here, your tentative suggestions, guiding, leading, and following your skill and special knowledge of ways to bring healing. I sense how I need you to be, and I tell you. And yet, there is more. Listen to me. There is more. Touching, touching. How do I need to express myself to you in my touching you, in my holding, stroking, tickling, resisting, fighting you, in my moving and dancing with you? Play of laughter, clutch of terror, song or drum. Touching my felt sense, how do I invite you to be with me in your touching me? And so I turn inside, wait, and listen, trust, and am gentle, touching, living, here now, breathing, experiencing in the eternal present, keeping company in your company with myself.
Thank you, Dorothy. I remember being at the focusing conference in Seattle, and there was one whole hour where Bebe read out loud poems from Rob Foxcroft. And we all sat in a circle listening and listening. From Gisela. Do you see the picture? However, Gisela, all that came with the picture, not the clip. So, can you tell us a bit about it, Gisela? Would you like to?
This is David Winter, the man, a friend of Bebe at the East Bank Club, with whom she is going to dance just now, I hope. There is a separate email, Katarina,
Thank you,
with the dance clip.
I'll look for it.
Mm-hmm. It may have come under the name Maria Dannenhauer.
It's fine. I would see whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I have one of them dancing if you don't find it.
Oh.
Okay.
Or we could also give time for our participants. Is there someone who would like to speak at this moment? Maybe Pauline or Cassell, a little bit later. There she is dancing. So, thank you.
I had another clip with Dave, but she just loved dancing there. Thank you, Gisela, for reminding us.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
So, we have about 4 more minutes today. Let's see who would like to share something, ask something.
I just want to say thank you so much for all the work all of you have done to put this together. It was wonderful and beautiful. Thank you.
I'm just thinking, Gisela, do you remember, was that Dave? Dave was the gentleman who danced on cruise ships, but he lived in the apartment and they would go to the club and dance. Is that right, Gisela?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was Dave. Just
David Winter was his name.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think he lived in her building, maybe? I don't know. Anyway.
No, he didn't live in her building. He used to come to the East Bank Club every now and then.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that video was from her 95th birthday party, if I remember right. Yeah. The last time I saw her was a year ago this week at her 99th party.
We have the clip now. Let's watch. Yeah. Marvelous. Marvelous.
Yes. It was like tango, wasn't it? How the different dances weave into each other.
Beautiful movement. That's what it was.
Christian, would you like to say something just as a closing?
I'm very glad with these different experiences with Bebe, and thank you for being a part of your community today. And I know Bibi is living in our tradition and in our kind of work in future. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We'll continue next week. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank everybody.
This was a beautiful testament to how she moved people around the world. Yeah, it was just so many memories. Everything everybody said brought back more memories of this amazing person.
For those of us who didn't know her well, we get a feeling of her.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I don't know how yet, but I think at the next focusing conference in Vienna, while we celebrate Jean's 100th birthday, there ought to be at least a little celebration of Bibi, who came to so many conferences.
She was, I think, at 25 straight, 24 or 25.
Yeah.
Merida was 25. No.
There was a point where Bibi and Robert Lee were the only people who'd been to every conference. I wanted to thank Dorothy for reading I'm very embarrassed to have my long poem read, but it was read very beautifully, and thank you so much. And
I'm sorry I had to step away, but I was able to hear the reading as I stepped away. So thank you again for that reading. It was lovely.
Beautifully read, yes.
And this will be posted on YouTube, correct, Katarina?
On Lynn Preston's channel.
Yeah.
And Lynn will enjoy this clip as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katarina. This was lovely.
Thanks, Katarina.